Welcome to First Name Basis, where we chat with special guests, industry leaders, and TribalScale employees to have an authentic but informal conversation on a variety of relevant tech and innovation topics. I'm Heather Page, Chief of Staff at TribalScale, and I'm chatting with Michelle Abbs, founder and CEO of Web3 Equity. Michelle, I'll pass it to you to introduce yourself.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for having me. It's lovely to be here. So yes, as the introduction states, I am the founder and CEO of Web3 Equity, which is an educational and onboarding community and company. We are in place to ensure that Web3 is gender equitable. And we believe we can do that by onboarding more women to engage in Web3 and blockchain technology, and also making sure that our male allies are really clear on their role and how they can best, be an allyship to that mission of achieving gender equity in Web3.
Sounds awesome. Can you tell us more about your journey into Web3, starting your own company into this space, and what kind of inspired you to go down this path?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually started my career as an educator. I taught fifth grade, and I was a teacher for a while, and then I trained other teachers how to be teachers. And so I've always had this, sort of educational and adult learning background. I transitioned then to technology. I worked for an ed tech startup for a while, and in that startup, experienced just some of the gendered nuances in startup companies, and so was really, inspired to make sure to raise awareness around that. And I joined Babson College and started running their accelerator, which was for female founders. And the goal of that accelerator was to help put more venture capital dollars in the hands of women. So, we know that female founders get less than 3% of venture capital annually. That number has stayed around that same metric for the past 3 years. It has not, increased at all. And so, I was really focused on gender issues in tech and entrepreneurship within that role. And then I took a more ecosystem level role and, was heading up a tech community for a real estate developer down in Miami. But during pandemic, we had to think a little differently around how we were engaging the community. So we, were pivoted to an event strategy once, we opened up sort of post-COVID. And at that time, we were seeing this, great energy and emergence of interest in NFTs. And so I proposed that we host a conference on the topic of NFTs during Art Basel in Miami. So we knew there was already, folks who would fly in to experience the art and culture of, what Art Basel offers. So we said this could be a great opportunity to, overlay the tech aspect of art, through NFTs. Mm-hmm. And that's really what started this whole Web3 journey for me was, planning and executing that conference.
Awesome. Wow, that's a great story. Very interesting. What inspired you to kind of take, this Web3 journey in a gender equity specific direction?
Yeah, so I think, the stat that I shared earlier around that, VC funding number being less than 3%, that, a lot of the antecedents of that number started from the creation of the venture capital model, which, comes from the 1960s, 1970s, from Silicon Valley. And truly, that was a group of, 40 white men who said, hey, we have this need. And they sort of created this system and structure and rules. And it was a very monochromatic approach because, given the group of people and their particular experiences, right, they created a structure that aligned to them. And I think we have seen then over the past, 40, 50 years, what that has done in terms of the disparity and the outcome. And it's a really hard system to break, right? And to fix after it's been so ingrained for multiple decades. So I think the opportunity I see in Web3 if we, from the inception point, from this moment where, the infrastructure of blockchain technology and a lot of the innovations that we will use in the future for decades to come, if we use this moment right now and we have more female voices, more people of color, more folks from diverse backgrounds at the table creating that foundational infrastructure, I hope and I think that in decades in the future, we won't be trying to undo the problems that may have been created from an inception point where you have a more, sort of homogenous, monochromatic group of people creating a set of rules.
Yeah, it makes a ton of space or a ton of sense, rather. That's super interesting. When you talked a little bit earlier about your male allies and engaging with that community, in my experience, at least going to Miami, there's certainly a lot of men involved in that kind of Web3 crypto space. Although I've met some awesome women in this space, yourself included. But curious, when you're talking about this and you're evangelizing on these topics, what kind of feedback, questions, or pushback do you get from those male allies? Do they kind of hear you say what you've just said and go, "Oh yeah, of course, makes complete sense. I agree," or is there a blind spot there that you kind of have to help them unlearn a bit?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of very well-intentioned allies. And I think some of them acknowledge that they have a lot of blind spots. Some of them may not even be aware, they don't know what they don't know. And so that's how we think about this allyship. Really, there's two core skills that we believe need to be developed more in men so that they can help move the needle and help leverage their positional power, right? Given their sort of the ways that society has accepted male leadership more than female leadership over centuries, right? So the two skills that we really work on is one, noticing gender imbalances. And what we find is that the more nuanced a gender imbalance is, the harder it is for our male allies to spot. And depending on, sort of their upbringing, their culture, some of those things that we might think are more overt examples of gender imbalances are still confusing for them to actually spot. So one is just being able to recognize those moments where there is an imbalance based on gender. And then the second is how to navigate speaking up or how to take action in those moments, especially when there's some risk associated, right? So the idea of a male ally is that they are leveraging their positional power to, really bring a group of people who have not always had positional power to the forefront without putting the set of actions on that group, right? So without putting it on women to go fix all of the problems, men are actually taking on some of the risk. They're taking action. They're speaking up in these moments. So I do find that some of them are really scared. How do I, if I'm out with all the bros and, this topic comes up and it makes me feel uncomfortable, how do I navigate that moment? There's some skill building that needs to happen there.
Very interesting. That's fantastic. It's great work you guys are doing. Do you see, I guess, accessibility and gender equity as barriers to Web3 adoption, sort of generally speaking? Like, are there components of Web3 and what it takes to be part of sort of building that from the ground level that is harder for people with different accessibility challenges or who are different genders?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. When you think about this on a global scale, right? I think sometimes I am guilty of getting myopically focused around the local environment, but when you really zoom out to a macro level and you think about, women's access to education and to technology and computers, we see massive pockets of this world where those things are not available to women. We don't have the same type of connectivity across the world that we do, that we're afforded, mostly in North America and in Canada and in the US. And so I think that's a real problem as we, again, think about this sort of infrastructure building moment. If we're leaving groups of people in this world behind, and their voices and their ideas and their challenges and solutions aren't at the table in this moment, I think that we are going to create a future that then just increases the disparities. So we think a lot about connectivity, and just women's access to education in different cultures in the world.
Yeah, very interesting. Do you see the Web3 industry as being able to address this and make space for women, generally, but also maybe in a unique way that is specific to Web3 and sort of its potential?
Yeah. And I think that's, what's inspiring about this moment is the more I see women understand the potential and opportunity of Web3 and then feel empowered to take action, then I see them get really creative around, what they could do with Web3. So for example, we launched this community very organically in Miami this past January. So we are, a fledgling 10-month-old company and group. And someone who came to one of those first dinners who did not know anything about blockchain or, Web3 at all, now has launched their own community and DAO focused on mothers and focused on the, creating a token economy around shared, duties and sort of sharing different, like assets around things that they've created from being a mom, I created this plan for my kid's first birthday to here's the pickup schedule that we use, and the route that we think about when we're driving our kids to school, these types of assets that then can be shared within the community. And there's a tokenomic structure that rewards, mothers for engaging, and then also, mothers for inspiring and offering other solutions. So I love seeing that come full circle, right? Is like, okay, we understand now what blockchain technology can unlock. We are empowered to create within that. And then we're actually creating solutions that are allowing to our gendered experience at times. And this one in particular, that's around motherhood.
Yeah, that's a great use case. That's awesome. Then also kind of curious, maybe if you can talk about how Web3 equity provides education, empowerment, and engagement to solve this problem. So, with your company, obviously guided by this awesome mission, what is sort of your approach to how you do address these challenges?
Yeah, I love to nerd out on this question because this is where the educator in me gets to really come through. So, there's a lot of research around best strategies to deliver new information that helps people retain that information. And so there's an entire, pyramid of the learning retention pyramid that showcases the different ways and modalities that people can learn, and then the correlated percent of that information that they retain. So right now, I find a lot of ways that we offer learning is through maybe podcasts like this one, right? So this is verbal learning, which we see about 10 to 30% of that information is retained. And so our approach is to really focus on the end of the pyramid that has the 70%, 90% levels of retention. And we see that with hands-on learning, and we see that with folks who actually teach others. So that is where you get that 90% retention rate, is when you are actually in the teacher seat and you are leading content. So what we do is we host monthly in-person events. We always open, with something that grounds the entire community, but then we break out into small groups. So first, people opt in to the, topic that aligns to where they are in their learning journey. And within that topic, we take a very hands-on approach. So if we're talking about digital wallets, for example, you may go in and create a wallet within that session. If we're talking about buying land in a metaverse, you're going to go in and experience the metaverse and look at the plots of land that you might buy. So it's very hands-on. But then we also engage our community members to lead sessions, right? Because Web3 is so early, there's still no real, I have a PhD in this thing, and so I'm the only person who can teach on this topic. No, there is a welcoming towards folks who maybe aren't at the same expert level, and we embrace that. So, maybe groups that have dabbled in this and they're part of a DAO and they just kind of did their first 2 or 3 investments, then they might lead a session around how to, participate in a DAO. And so they're actually deepening their learning by offering their insights in that, discussion oriented breakout session at our event. So, we do this in-person learning really focused on highest retention rate learning styles with the community.
I can see why you love this question. It's a great answer. Just so interesting how the way you guys bring that inclusive approach to like driving inclusivity across the industry. It's just awesome. You guys have released the Tuttle Tribe NFT collection. Can you talk a little bit about that and its tribute to Julia Tuttle, the woman who founded Miami?
Yes. So we love, sharing this story because I find that not many folks know this. Miami is the only major US city that was founded by a woman. And I often picture myself like back in 1892 and what it was like for Julia Tuttle then. I mean, at that point, we know, women did not have the type of rights that we do today. And so for Julia Tuttle to purchase the amount of acreage that she did in Miami and to really establish this place as a city, that's truly an example of shattering a glass ceiling in a way that, inspires me so much. And I think that's the ethos of the community, right? Is taking things that may seem impossible and really stepping up to the plate and redefining what's possible. And that's what we think Julia Tuttle did. And, that's what the collection is in honor of. And I think we're really lucky that we have a group of other leaders and politicians in Miami that support that. So our county Mayor Daniela Levine Cava is our first female county mayor. And so we love, having her support of the collection. And then our city of Miami mayor, Francis Suarez, is an ally and, very supportive of living up to Julia Tuttle's sort of founding vision. And so both of them have, are holders of our NFT collection and really supportive of, Julia Tuttle's legacy that, our local community is looking to live out.
It's a great story. And I did not know that either. So very interesting. And I guess way to go, Julia Tuttle. It's very cool. Yeah. What is the significance of Miami to Web3 equity, but also to the Web3 community in general? I find when I talk to, friends who live in New York or San Francisco or, even, other tech cities around the world, I find there's a bit of maybe an underappreciation of what's happening with the tech scene in Miami, and in particular, how it's sort of intertwined with like that crypto Web3 kind of space. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So I think, Miami in the past maybe had gotten a bad rap for being only a vacation or a fun spot. And I think, during COVID and we saw an influx of folks from other communities saying, hey, I now can work from home. I maybe my home base can be somewhere else. And they decided to pick up and move to Miami. And I think what a lot of folks found is that, yes, this is, a high quality of life where you can enjoy your life, but we also get stuff done. And so I think, we've embraced the newcomers to Miami, and especially the folks in the tech community. And we've worked really hard to host events, to integrate new, residents in with people who have lived here and built in the technology scene, for the past couple decades. And so I think we're seeing these two groups of people come together in a place that's still young enough, right? I look at cities like New York or Boston and those histories of those places have been kind of literally written in stone for since the beginning of the United States of America, really, if you look at Boston and such. And Miami, I think, has, we're still kind of an adolescent in our growth journey as a city. So we're malleable and people are attracted to coming to a place like this and being able to make an impact and leave your thumbprint on a place. And I think we're seeing this convergence around the opportunity of Web3 and crypto and what that presents, and then the opportunity of a city. And what that presents, and those two things coming together here, and we're starting to see, real products and things that are shifting, the way that crypto and Web3 is adopted broadly. And so, we've got groups like blockchain.com, MoonPay is here, One of, which is a music NFT. So we're starting to see, that community be embraced, within Miami and grow.
Yeah, for sure. I love the way you describe it, because it's so clear when you're there and you talk to people, and the passion that they have for it is just very, very, it's exciting. And I can see why it's completely empowering for those of you that are participating in the space. You talked a little bit about, inclusive approaches to education and how, the approach to education for this more diverse community is a bit different. Do you find that for community building itself, it's very different? Because whenever I'm in Miami chatting with my, crypto Web3 folks, the importance of community and having those ties together is always something that they refer to. Do you find that there are different approaches to how that community is built or structured or operates? Do you find it's different for different genders as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I can answer this only in the one gender I've experienced in my life. But what I will say is that there are so many female-led community initiatives. Like if I look at my peer group and I look at the other organizations that are really in, ecosystem level connection points, they're led by women. And I will say that we're extremely collaborative. We have calls with each other when there are big moments in Miami, around Art Basel, for example, or Miami Tech Month, when there's a lot of events like, hey, let's talk about the calendar events. When are you doing this day? Who's your target audience? So that we're thoughtful about, the way we sort of launch these initiatives to the community, so that we're collaborating with each other and we're not either cannibalizing or having moments where we're speaking to similar audiences and making them have to choose between one event or the other. So I think that very sort of communal collaborative approach is something I've enjoyed about my female counterparts. I would hope that our male colleagues would have a similar approach. I don't know that that's always the case, but I would say, with the group of women that lead in other community level roles, we definitely support and embrace each other's initiatives and events. And actually, I think that's what I credit a lot of the success of the launch of our, Tuttle Tribe NFT in our community, was because there were so many other supportive communities that said to their networks, hey, we don't really have a women and, Web3 group. Let's all support this one. And that really came from the other female leadership in Miami.
That is super interesting. I love it. So last question here, let's talk about the future of Web3 equity. What is on the roadmap for the platform and for the community?
Yeah. So, this is, I think, the blessing and the curse of so much potential opportunity in Web3. It's literally like, which thing do we choose to do? We are always going to remain consistent with the core in-person offering. But what we find is, with that can be challenging to scale. Right. And so we're thinking a lot about what are the ways that people can learn in this type of, retention-based learning model at scale. So what does this look like, to do virtually and to really, communicate even beyond our local partners. So that's one piece. And then really building out the male ally programming overall. So like structuring that as a really clear course for people to engage with. And then also thinking about ways that we are able to showcase the organizations and groups that have been born out of Web3 equity at an even larger scale. So we have, events coming up during Art Basel that will, usually our events have about 80 to 100 people. And so when we think about larger scale events, those are around, the 500 plus mark. Mm-hmm. So we'll do that in December, and we'll also do that again for Women's History Month in March. So those are the things to be on the lookout for in the future with Web3 equity.
Fantastic. I'll have to align my next trip to Miami accordingly.
Oh, please do. That would be so wonderful.
For sure. It's super exciting, the stuff you're doing, and I love to hear it. So very glad we were able to have you with us today, Michelle. Thank you so much for joining. For those of you listening, you can check out this podcast and more episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and more. This has been First Name Basis. Thanks, everyone.